Hey.
Hello!
Sup, everybody? Fantasy Top 5. Back
That's us.
on a Monday after a crazy Sunday.
It was crazy.
Yes, it was an exciting week. We have lots to talk about, so I guess we should mention who we are. We're Fantasy Top 5.
We are. My name is Eric, and I am the single host here.
All right, and I am Sean. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. I'm the other host here.
Yeah.
And
You're
we-
supposed to say you're also the only host here.
Oh, sorry.
It's going to be not funny at all, and you ruined it.
I'm sorry. And we
What
have
over here is
Lane back there
He's
pushing buttons.
he's the
And now you know why I
producer.
refuse to be host, everyone.
He's
That
smart.
makes a lot of sense. We do a fantasy football podcast on Justin TV at justin.tv/fantasy top 5, and also downloadable in your local iTunes store.
And most other apps that let you get podcasts. So look
Such
us
as
up.
Stitcher.
We will
and-
help you not only, I guess you probably already know if you've made it to your playoffs, but we will help you not only make your playoffs, but win them.
Well, that's what I want to talk about in a minute here, Sean.
All right, what do you want to talk about? It's been a minute, technically. No, it hasn't, but...
No, we still got to say we still got to talk about how you can tweet at us at Fantasy Top 5.
Yeah.
You can also check out our Facebook,
Our Tumblr.
facebook.com/fantasy top 5, our Tumblr at fantasytop5.tumblr.com,
Our YouTube.
at youtube.com/fantasy top 5, and ourselves
At selves.com.
at selves.fantasytop5.self.org. That's awful. No, so what I wanted to talk about was that, it's coming down to the end here. It's coming down to the end for NFL teams, and it's coming down to the end for fantasy teams as well.
Indeed it is.
This is the part where we separate the boys from the men, and the
The
boys to the men.
in Boys to Men. The
And
band.
boys to men, the band.
BBD.
This is where we separate it. And so, I mean, some people are already out. Some
Yeah.
teams, some NFL teams are already out.
I think, some
some
NFL teams.
podcasts are already completely, I mean, they've given up at this point. We haven't.
Yeah, we've pushed through. We've had a couple solid weeks in there, so it looks like we may make the fantasy podcast playoffs.
Yeah, that's a thing.
We definitely need a
That we
good
made up.
couple. Yeah, yeah, we definitely need a good couple weeks here.
We
to
do.
make
We
it.
need to finish it out. Yeah, we got to finish strong. And so far, this intro's not doing it for
Oh,
this
no,
one.
it's a good intro.
And then the next one, you're actually going to be gone, so I better step my game up there. We'll get a guest appearance, though. We already have our guest in place. It's
Who's that
going to be a surprise.
Oh, it's going to be a surprise.
Yes, it is, but it's going to be good. And so hopefully everyone does well. Hopefully we have some good advice for all the people that really, are trying to make it into the playoffs that are struggling. So
Yeah, because it's coming down to that time of year that if you have a player, that player has a concussion. So you'll be looking for other players who don't have concussions to play.
or there's a lot of stuff. And the first two, we always start every podcast with our newses and bruises, which is our top 5 news stories and top 5 injuries. But the first two I have are one is definitely about NFL in general, and the second one is a little bit about fantasy. But the same thing. There's some NFL teams coming down the stretch. 4 teams actually clinched a playoff spot
Mhm.
in Week 13 with a win, which was Denver, Houston, New England, and I wrote Houston again.
Yes. Yes.
So there's a 4th one in there. I think it was Atlanta with their win
Yeah, I
over
think
the
it was
Saints.
Atlanta. And that's the thing is 3 of those teams are from the AFC because the AFC is a wreck, and the NFC is quite a bit closer. And this actually is NFL, but also fantasy related because, as we all know, anyone who plays all the way into Week
Change
17 knows that teams will bench their stars going into the playoffs if they
That's a good
if they
point.
can't get a better place going into the playoff seedings. So if you own Arian Foster, go pick up Tate or Forsett. They both got a lot of work on Sunday, actually, and ended up being a disappointing game for Foster owners. So I don't know if you're going to talk about that later, but I just wanted to throw it in there.
We'll talk about it now and later.
All right.
No, it's really weird. Yeah, the NFL
candy.
news would have to do with NFL fantasy news.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. Those
It's weird
two
that they're
kinda-
related.
It's weird. Yeah, it doesn't even seem like the same thing. But and then also 3 teams coming down the stretch have big losses, which include the 49ers, the Bears, and I have the 49ers here again. I'm just kidding. It's the Ravens. That'd be ridiculous if I really messed that up twice.
Yeah.
Which all three had big losses. The 49ers wasn't surprising to me, but
Yeah,
maybe
really.
to some people, you know.
How the hell do the Rams lose to the Jets and then win the 49ers? And it's not a like fluke because there has only been one tie in the last however many years, and it was the 49ers against the Rams. And the Rams are the ones that adjusted better for their second matchup and won. And it didn't surprise me, but it would have surprised me a lot less if the 49ers would have came out and just owned them, because I thought 49ers have a lot more going on with their team. And that new hot quarterback, who I actually said was going to do bad, and he didn't do terrible, but
He
and
did
since
pretty
a lot
bad.
of the top 10 quarterbacks managed to be bottom in the like below 15 range, I kind of let you down there, but
Yeah.
not on a normal day. But yeah, so it's weird, but I like that the Rams won. It was a great game. So
Yeah, it really
So, yeah.
was. Yeah, it was really weird. Yeah, there were a lot of
it's
starting
Fisher, dude, I
quarterbacks.
think. But sorry, I just keep going on about the
And
Rams.
Kaepernick. Yeah, we're like on two completely separate pages. But yeah, like a lot of quarterbacks did really bad yesterday. You're right. Tom Brady had an awful game.
Yeah,
a
he
lot
sure
of
did.
players did, Except Russell Wilson.
Yeah,
had an
that kid.
incredible game.
Yeah, and I thought he'd have a bad game against the Bears, and he just stepped up. And they were on the road too, and that's a good defense on the road is kind of what people thought would bring the Seahawks down. And then they stepped up and they looked insane. And Sidney Rice and Golden Tate, they both made a couple of plays, and those were the two plays that won the game. And it was with a lot of help from Wilson, but I was just like,
Yeah, that
wow.
final catch from Sidney Rice, and he seems to be okay too. He's not even in my bruises. He got up and is fine
Yeah.
after looking like he was dead.
Yeah, I thought he might have broken his neck or something. And then his one teammate came over and tried to pull him up, and the coach came over and pushed the teammate away. I was like,
He's
what
dead.
the hell are you doing?
And so, pretty crazy. My number 2 will go with starting quarterbacks, and this is where it kind of gets a little crazy. Is my first one, Foles is starting for the rest of the year for the Philadelphia Eagles. So all you Michael Vick owners, I'm sorry. I feel bad for you.
But you should have known to get rid of Vic weeks ago. We kind of talked about it. He was on a decline. And I honestly think Foles will be the starting quarterback there at the beginning of next season. I do think Vic will at least be on a team next year. I think it's hard to see him not starting because there's so many teams out there that would kill for a good quarterback.
The Rams.
No, not the Rams. the Jets. The
Bradford's a bust, dude. We talked
Cardinals.
about this yesterday.
Yeah, you
I've
talked about it
officially
yesterday.
decided Bradford is a bust. They could have had RG3. I hope they get Vic.
All right.
Not really. I like Bradford still. Number 2 is Sanchez. Gets benched for McElroy, which was huge in the game because Sanchez
It's
looked
macro time. What? Doesn't sound as good as Tebow time, but it looked
McElmania.
better than
Oh,
Tebow time.
McElmania.
Yeah, I do like that.
That's pretty good. Yeah, that was pretty good
Yeah.
for just throwing that out. And they end up winning the game, actually, which they did not look like they were going to win the game when Sanchez was in. So McElroy came in and looked not great, but good.
He looked like a quarterback.
Yeah, which
And-
Sanchez hasn't for quite a while now. So
Yeah,
that's
I'm
a step up.
still blown away with the fact that that just New York, I cannot imagine playing anything there. I can imagine going into the pro table tennis league there because fans there are insane. They were going crazy about McElroy coming in, and I'm like, are you kidding me? And he didn't look great. They just switched the offense to make it easy. It's like you couldn't have switched it for Sanchez weeks ago when you had no offensive players. Like they just ran it with not their main running back. They literally, it's like they gave up. They put in their backup the running back, who probably should be playing. And
Yeah,
to be fair, as much as
better.
I like Sanchez, he's stale right now. Something is wrong, and I think it's mostly to do with all the negative criticism and stuff. But then they put in that guy, and I think they should roll with those two because
I
they've
do too.
obviously gave up in that game and it worked. So if they give up on the season, they might find a weird way to squeak into the playoffs if every other team loses. So yeah, that's my opinion.
Yeah, Sanchez has just not looked good. I think they need to stick with McElroy.
Mm-hmm.
And number 3, Kaepernick is still named the starter, even after a horrendous loss to the Rams. That almost ends in a second tie, which we kind of talked about.
Yeah, it was in the final seconds that they won that.
They almost tied again. It was pretty close. It would have been an exciting story, but it would have been pretty bad for the Rams.
It's never happened. The same team has never tied twice in one season,
That
and
makes
especially
sense.
not
There's
the
not a lot
two
of
teams
ties.
against each other. So it's one of those things that had never happened, and I literally think it will never get this close to happening again.
Yeah.
Like one team makes a big adjustment. Usually, it's usually not what that game was, where it was super close the whole time and just a couple big plays happened.
Except Legatron, hit that big field goal, and they didn't false start this time, which was
Yeah.
good.
Well,
no,
they don't
delay
call
a
him-
game. That's what it
Yeah,
was.
they don't
last
call
time.
him Legatron for no reason. He's definitely got a leg on him.
That's very true. And speaking of Legatron, we should talk about Megatron. That was a
Holy hell, Calvin Johnson.
Calvin Johnson is just insane. Anybody who had him on his fantasy team could have scored over 200 like I did yesterday and destroy their competition. Most of them probably did. But just in general, even though he kind of didn't look like himself, had had good games, but nothing great at the beginning of the year, is on pace to break Jerry Rice's single season receiving record. All he needs is 400 more. So if he has another game like he had yesterday, he's already broken it.
And they don't have to worry about getting in the playoffs, so he'll be playing hopefully in all games, and barring injury, of course.
And I imagine they'll try to.
And that's
get
the thing
it
is,
for
me
him.
and Eric, I don't want to say we saw it coming, but we asked, and on our polls a couple weeks ago, we asked before he got hot again. I think it was one of our first
Yeah.
ones. If people thought Calvin Johnson would be put top 10, and he's right back up there. I think he's third or fourth. I don't know. The week's not completely over yet, but I think he's top
As far as
5.
fantasy points?
Yeah. Like he had a turnaround.
Crazy.
Well, that's
Yeah,
the
it
thing
was-
is you were down at the bottom of both leagues, and you have in both leagues.
Well,
and
I
all of a
started
sudden,
out really
you're in
good.
the playoffs.
I started out winning, and then all of a sudden I just dropped, and I just kept dropping, and then as soon as he came back, now I'm right back, and I'm gonna
Yeah, dude, that dude is insane.
He single-handedly made me start to lose and start to win, and you tried to trade me for him. I was
You were
bold.
smart.
It was bold of you to try to get him from me. I said no.
Every once in a while, you think your co-host is dumber than he really is, and he proves to be smarter than you really is. What?
It was good. I liked it.
Oh.
Moving on, we'll talk about Ndamukong Suh. Speaking of the Lions, gets in trouble again, which we talked about. Every game, something. Apparently, towards the end of the game, he gave a guy a concussion, and then started laughing and dancing over the top of him with his teammates.
Yeah, with his teammates. Whose name is on it?
Sue.
With his teammates. Like, that's the thing.
Well,
is
the
he's
other
just a
teammates are good
target now.
guys.
Ask Sue.
I talked to the other teammates. They're good guys.
Oh, they're good
I
guys.
talked to the Sue.
They were just They were afraid of Sue, so they just followed his lead.
Yeah, they were.
Well, that's the thing is Sue should ask Harrison about what it's like, because he's going to do the same thing Harrison has done. He's going to be criticized and criticized. He should ask Reed about it. He should ask any of these guys who plays hard-nosed football at all. You're going to be criticized for the rest of the time. It's like that Thanksgiving thing. I still don't think it looked like he was, even if he was trying to kick at all, I don't think it was what they made it into. Like, it was, he's flipped over and he's the one who's like, oh my God, I can't believe he threw his leg out. It's
He
like,
planned the whole thing.
yeah.
He did. He's like, you're going to flip me over, and I'm going to get right up there, and I'm just going to kick Schwab in the nuts. I
Yeah.
talked to him. It happened.
Yeah, but Schwab was the bigger man. He refused to talk about that guy. He's like, I'm not going to talk about that person anymore. So he took the big approach. So it sounds like Sue really did get him in the nuts, because he doesn't act like he had a whole lot left. What?
That was good. I liked it. And the fifth news story we had, which I questioned whether I should put it on here or not, but we've talked about it a lot right before the show and yesterday a little bit. And most people have probably heard about it at this point, but it is a really big NFL news story, is the Chiefs linebacker Javon Belcher. If anyone hasn't read about it, murders his girlfriend and commits suicide in front of the Chiefs coaches. And they're talking about it a lot, and the reason I decided to put it in here was mainly just all the different ways you can go with the story. They brought gun control into it. During the Sunday night game yesterday, they've talked about football head injuries, since there's been 6 suicides of NFL players or past NFL players in the last 2 years. The whole thing about whether you should be sad or, I mean, it's because it really is. I mean, it's a really sad story, but at the same time, all the players, it's kind of like, how do you think about it? Because on one end, he commits suicide, which is a really sad thing, but on the other end, he also murdered someone. And
It's
So
a
it's
tragedy.
kind of-
That's all there is to it. It's a tragedy.
It's just a
but
really, it's just, there's so many different levels that it's just,
I think more than anything, like I think the NFL did the best they could to deal with it.
and that was the other thing. They still had the game, which was
Yeah.
another big thing. They
And I think
didn't
that-
put the game off at all, which
Yeah.
people thought maybe they should have, especially with the coach. I mean, the
Yeah.
Romeo Cornell, the coach, watched him commit suicide in front of him,
Mhm.
and then had to coach the team the next day. It's all just a really crazy story. It's not something that
Yeah.
happens all the time.
And
And,
that's the thing is I think they took as good of approach as they could. Like putting the game off, I don't think does anything besides highlight it more. Like and
that's kind of true.
it's one of those things like it is what it is. Like it's a literally it's a tragedy. It's awful. But I think worse than anything, like they talk about them playing the game, I think worse than anything else is the fact that all these people that are involved with the NFL took this thing and ran with it while it looked to me like everyone was trying to they're like, here's an open avenue for me to throw my personal opinions out there in front of the world and make a huge deal out of, like you said, gun safety,
It's just taken
injuries,
so many
all this stuff.
approaches
And it's
to
like,
it.
he's a pretty young player.
Yeah, he's
like,
25.
Yeah, it's not like he's a guy who's retired and he did this. Like, and it could be due to some head trauma or whatever, but it's just one of those things that I think this is just
A crazy.
Yeah, it's just crazy. But yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things it can boil up so much stuff, and you can sit there and talk
We
about
could probably
it forever.
talk about it for the whole show.
Well,
if
we talked about it
wanted
for
to,
20
and we
minutes
could
when you
also-
mentioned it about whether or not you
Before
should put
the
it
show
in.
even.
So, yeah.
But it's just crazy. Yeah, it's just a crazy thing, and I don't know. I mean, there's kind of that thing where it's like, do we continue on? Is that the best thing to do? Is to have the game, and and they won, which was good, and there was a lot of really good speeches. I mean, I feel like
I thought Brady Quinn had a great
yeah,
speech.
just talking about just people and how you should try to really ask people how their day is. Maybe he was apparently a pretty quiet guy, and a lot of people didn't talk to him, and so I don't know. I guess if nothing else, try to take something good out of it, and maybe that's it. Maybe you should, if you see someone's having trouble, or if you see something like that, maybe try to just ask them how their day is. But at the same time, I don't know. It's just a crazy situation. So we'll move on from that. We'll go through our bruises really quick. Number 1 is Jordy Nilsson. For any of you Jordy Nilsson owners,
I own him.
re-injured his hamstring. It doesn't look like it. It looks like he might be back. He'll probably miss at least a game or two.
Mm-hmm.
Stevie Johnson injures his hamstring as well and didn't return to the game, so keep an eye on that. Also doesn't look like it'll be quite as bad. Earl Bennett suffers a concussion. Rashad Jennings leaves game with a head injury, which is Jaguars cannot stay healthy, especially that running back situation.
Yeah, they have like a punt return guy, not punt return, a punt block / fullback kind of guy running now, that Owens guy. And it's like, yeah, they're awful.
When you
at
get to
running
your
back.
fourth
Awful.
string, yeah, it's kind of. Is MJD ever coming back?
Yeah, well, that's the thing is I don't know. I think
thought
they're
he
maybe
would at some
it's one of
point.
those things where they're not making the playoffs, so I think that
Yeah.
they're like we have to make sure he's ready because as you can tell from what happened after he got hurt, they did not build to have him get hurt. They're like if he gets hurt, we basically do not have a running back. And cuz everyone has said from day one that Jennings is bad. Like he was bad at the beginning of the season and they did nothing to fix it. Because he got time because MJD didn't play because of the holdout for a second. So it's one of those
they
things.
should draft someone to back up MJD.
You know what they should do? They should go out and find a guy who hasn't played since high school and pick him up because that worked well for the Eagles.
Yeah, it did. Or someone who wasn't drafted, like
Yeah.
Foster. Either, just
Yeah,
they're out there. You just have to go find them.
it's a little thing called scouting.
Apparently, you're really good. Yeah, I don't know how they found Bryce Brown. They were talking about it yesterday that he has not started a game since high school.
It's
How do
insane
you
to me.
make it to the NFL? He played in like 3 different colleges, but never really played or started.
Mm-hmm.
Craziest thing ever.
Yeah.
And number 5 is Cecil Shorts, who leaves game with a head injury as well. Definitely keep an eye on him because he has been my favorite player.
And that's the thing is,
Best wide receiver 3 you could own.
and that's the thing is, he's
Honestly.
wide receiver 2 going into the playoffs. I think like
Or
it's one of those
one.
things. You listed those 5 receivers. with the consistency he's had, he's the biggest name on there.
I know, I
Stevie
put him at the
Johnson has
end.
not been
He's
as
been
good
okay.
as he's been. Yeah, he's been okay, but nothing great.
He's been wide receiver
Yeah.
3. I've kept him in. I still keep playing him
And-
as my third wide
uh-huh.
receiver, but he's never.
And Jordy Nelson keeps getting injured, and that team has Greg Jennings back now. And I wouldn't be surprised if you don't see Jordy Nelson until they go into the playoffs. Like, they have the weapons. As long as only one of their receivers is hurt, they're fine. And, like, they're that stacked. That's the one position they're stacked at. And they try to put together 2 running backs to make one real running back. And they did a good job last week, but I don't see that working going forward. But receivers, they're fine.
And I feel like with Cecil Shorts at this point, as long as he comes back from that concussion, play him every week.
Yeah.
Like, I heard people talk last week about how you got to play Larry Fitzgerald over Cecil Shorts because he hasn't proven himself yet, and it's like,
The
Are
thing
you
that
an
you told me
idiot?
about that was the dumbest thing I have ever heard. Like, you said, the guy said that he played Larry Fitzgerald because if Larry Fitzgerald does bad, he made the right call because Larry Fitzgerald's a better receiver. And if Cecil Shorts if he put in Cecil Shorts, it makes him look dumb. It's like, is that
yeah,
what
you have to
said?
blame it on yourself because you played Cecil
Yeah.
Shorts over Larry Fitzgerald,
Dumbest
so it's your fault.
Take I've ever heard on anything
Which I
fantasy
feel
related.
like as fantasy advice people,
Yeah.
experts.
A lot of them
I
are.
don't like to call us experts, but whatever
yeah.
we are, I feel like we do kind of tend to maybe jump the gun a little bit on some people, but we're also still cautious about it as well. Like
Yeah.
I had trouble playing Cecil Shorts for a while, but
Well,
after
I had my wife pick him up, and I should have had her play him. I was like, I don't know about Jordy Nelson, and I also don't know about VJack, who she has. And I had her take out VJack because she also has Hakeem Nicks. And I'm like, I think Hakeem Nicks is going to have a big game. And then Nelson got hurt. Don't get me wrong, VJack, I think it was still the right call. He only had like 5 points because it's just a standard league. But Cecil Shorts had 14 again for like the 5 out of 6 weeks he's had that many points.
and in a PPR he gets, well, not that many because he didn't catch a lot of catches, but he's almost 20 points in the last 3 or 4 games, and it took me a while, like, of him sitting on my bench being like, okay, he's still having good games. And then you kind of start it, and then you kind of look at Larry Fitzgerald and the year he's had for one, and you got to look at his quarterback situation.
That is the worst offense in the league, and it has him
Awful.
on it. And by the way, Cecil Shorts is getting up there, but he's still not owned in about a quarter of leagues, so you can still pick him up. So you might mention that later, but I feel like in case
No,
you
I've
don't,
talked
'cause
about him a lot.
You've hit it a lot, so I thought you might not. So still, check your waiver wire. Him, T.Y. Hilton, you've also talked about a lot, so I don't know if you have him on there. But
I think I might.
all right.
Anyway, there we go.
All right, now we're going to jump over to the
Yeah, we should-
top 5
fall in line.
surprises and disappointments. My number one surprise of the week was the Seahawks team in general. Everyone had a
Yeah,
ton of
it's huge.
questions about them playing on the road for one, and then also had a ton of questions about Russell Wilson, their rookie quarterback, playing against a good defense. And we kind of talked about it earlier. They came out, and the Bears, who top of the NFC North, and everyone's like, their defense, it's so crazy. They're so great. And then they came out, the whole offense had a good game. Like we said before, Russell Wilson, he had 293 yards passing, 71 rushing yards, and he threw for 2 touchdowns, one of which was the game-winning touchdown in overtime, which rookies, it's insane to me now because multiple rookies did it at the end of games this week. But
Yeah,
it's just
just in
crazy how
general.
quickly they're figuring it out. But yeah, he did great. Both their main wide receivers, Sidney Rice, had 99 yards and the game-winning touchdown, and Golden Tate had 96 yards and a better touchdown, but the one that sent them into overtime. That because he broke like 4 tackles and got in. And then also Marshawn Lynch was able to run for 87 yards and a touchdown. And you expect that out of him, but like because he's been running against any team, no matter how good their defense is. But you didn't expect the rest. And then also they held the Bears to 17 points, and that's with them using their main weapons. Like Forte did way better than I thought he would do, and Brandon Marshall did well, but they didn't let anything else happen. Like those two got their yards, but they didn't get the touchdowns, I guess, as much. And so the Seahawks just really surprised me, and I really do think at this point
I think they
we're gonna
surprised the
see 'em-
Bears. Right?
Yeah, I think we're going to see them in the playoffs, and really, I think it's kind of bold, but I think we could maybe even see them at the top of that division. Like San Francisco's had some holes. I still think San Francisco's a better team going forward, but I think the Seahawks have the easier schedule, and I don't know. I think it's going to work out to be a good end of the season because that NFC is close. There's a lot of teams in the hunt, and I
Even
love
the
that. I
Rams,
hate
yeah,
that the
surprisingly.
AFC is just the AFC's done almost already. Like it's almost already decided, and it's the teams that I hate minus the Colts.
It's so frustrating. And every team I like has to be in the hard division every
Yeah.
time.
And it happens. But that's the thing is, I think the Rams will be that division's gonna be tough as hell next year. And that's the thing is, the Arizona really is one quarterback away from being a legitimate team too, because they have enough running backs they can work something out to get yards
The
there.
NFC West was it's definitely surprising after being the worst division in the whole league.
Good coaching. That's all it is. They all got good coaches.
That's true.
That's it's so much is coaching. All right, but the second surprise of the week is Donnie Avery, who had 91 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns. One of those touchdowns was that huge touchdown as time expired, and that was insane to me. And also, it was insane to watch another rookie quarterback come in and he passed it off rather than I think almost any other player in the NFL sees that It's very hard to say if he would have not made it, like because it was so close. But he's like, if I pass this off, this dude's a playmaker. He's got a couple steps on me. He's gonna for sure make it, and that's unselfish football. And it looked awesome, and they got the win. And like I said, they're legitimate. Like they are a legitimate threat out there because they won the Lions. And like I've said every time, I think the Lions they're in every game for a reason because they're not a terrible team. They're not a pushover. And Avery was a huge part of that. And it's tough because I think Hilton is the second guy. I think Avery's going to be the third guy there.
Yeah, it's hard to know. It's kind of like
It's
the same thing with the Packers. It's really hard to know which wide receiver, and that right there kind of I think shows you how good Luck is. That they're not.
Yeah.
I feel like the teams with the fantasy guy that just does incredible typically kind of aren't the best teams, and that's not always the case. But a quarterback that can spread it around and get everyone the ball is so much harder to defend, and Luck's doing that this year. You never quite know.
Yeah, he threw 4 touchdowns. When you
who to
throw
play.
4, and all the yards he gets, like lots of people have a good game because Reggie Wayne didn't have a good game, but T.Y. Hilton and Donnie Avery did.
Both had huge games.
But that's the thing
yeah.
is usually Reggie Wayne has a good game, and it's a balancing act of which one is going to get more. But I think you want to have Donnie Avery on your team if you have an open spot, just because you got to play matchups. Every once in a while, you're going to see it, and you're just going to get that feeling. You're like, I know he's going to have a big game, and you got to go with that. And I really like him. I really do.
And T.Y. Hilton, he's had 4 touchdowns in the last 3 games, so it's tough to know who to play there, but especially coming down to the end. But any of those guys in a flex is not bad at all. So
yeah, especially it's so many damn injuries. So yeah, pick up any guy who has potential, especially in deep leagues. But all right, the third surprise of the week was Steve Smith, who has had a very disappointing season so far. He only had 1 touchdown going into this week. But then this week, he if you kept him on your team, you're probably already out of the playoffs. But if for some reason you're not and you needed a big win to kind of push you over the top, he helped you out a lot this week. He had 120 yards receiving and a touchdown. And I think if you still have him, you play him going forward. The Panthers have a ridiculously easy schedule. Like him and Cam Newton, I think, are both going to own it. I think Greg Olsen is one of those guys you have to look at going forward.
yeah, he had another big game.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Tight ends in general had a really big game yesterday, though.
Yeah, and Eric knows better than most that I'm a huge Steve Smith guy. So it's good to see him come back like this because I love the guy. People after his year last year, everyone's focusing on him, and with Lewis Murphy and LaFell not really doing as much as they could, it's really left him to get the double coverage and stuff a lot. So,
Yep.
but like I said, easy schedule going forward. So hopefully he can keep this up. And then my fourth surprise of the week was the New York Jets finally giving up on Sanchez. And I've said before,
It's a
I
pretty
like
big
Sanchez,
surprise,
but they've stuck with him even though he's had a rough season. But they finally were like, the Cardinals are the worst team in the world. Like colleges could win them. What are you doing, Sanchez? You're just giving up interception after interception. So they finally came in. They get with Greg McElroy. And he led the team to the game-winning touchdown, like a drive, like we already kind of talked about. the main thing that with this is, are they going to go Tebow time now? Are they going to stick with McElroy? Or are they going to go back to Sanchez? Like, it's hard to say what they're going to do going
Yeah,
forward.
there's no news on it yet.
Yeah, and I think Rex Ryan will keep people guessing for at least a little bit.
But I don't
But
see how you can put Sanchez back in.
yeah, well, that's the thing is just the fans there. It's such a lift when McElroy came off because they're so done with Sanchez, and they dumbed down the offense for McElroy, but it worked for them because I think they're a dumbed down team at this point. And I hate to say that because it sounds like I'm just trying to pick at them, but they're just they're not great. And
Did you see the guys? There was a guy who made his own jersey who was at the game who had a Sanchez jersey, but instead of Sanchez, it said butt fumble on it. It was hilarious.
that is, I feel so
Which
bad for
That
Sanchez.
play alone, I feel like that play alone makes it so Sanchez can never be the starter for the Jets again. I'm sorry. He could come out and have a huge game and people would still remember. Do you remember that time he ran into the guy and fumbled because he ran into his own guy's ass?
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, that's the thing is it's rough right
Yeah,
now.
It's a bad play.
All right, and then my last surprise of the week is actually a guy who's been a surprising player in the last 2 weeks, but I do the surprises on Monday, and he played last Monday, and then he played last night, and that is Bryce Brown, and he is just
Wow.
he has looked spectacular in his first 2 games. Against the Panthers last Monday, he had 178 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. And then this week, he had against the Cowboys, he had 169 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. And he was the number 1 fantasy running back both weeks. And I don't even know what to say about it. Like, he's just insane. And it's also McCoy they've talked about. He's recovering slower than people would have thought from the injuries. He was still in the first phase, and there's 5 phases. So I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see him the rest of the year or if we don't see him for a couple weeks. So if you can pick up Bryce Brown, he's still out there in over 25% of leagues. Like, he's only owned in, I think, 72% of leagues. So if you can get your hands on him,
72.
pick him up just for the potential of – because I think even if McCoy comes back, they're going to use that in a timeshare.
That's the same thing I was thinking. I was going to say the same thing. And I got bold and started him yesterday, which is why I had such a huge game. But
Yeah, and that's the thing is he's one of those guys that it's crazy because I don't care what anyone says. McCoy has had a rougher season. It's just different kind of running back. Like you don't have to set up tough blocks for him because he doesn't run outside. He's like straight up the middle and makes these most of the time. But with these 2 guys, I feel like they can be like, we need to free up some money because we're rebuilding. Because they're obviously rebuilding next
they're
year.
going to.
I think Vic will be gone to cut money. I think Asamoah will end up being gone because all he does is hold on that team. And I think I don't think McCoy will be gone, but I wouldn't be surprised if they decided to roll with Bryce Brown because he's been insane. So it'll be interesting to see what
they still
he
have a
does
few weeks
going
left
next.
to
Yeah.
see what's going to happen. And I think that's why they're starting Foles.
Yeah, and
Might
Foles,
as well see. Maybe Foles ends up being awful the last 4 games, and they keep Vic.
Yeah, and you can
Or-
see from watching Foles. Foles is a quarterback. Like, he has a lot of potential. He's built like a quarterback, and I think he'll be decent for him next year. All right, and then my disappointments of the week. The first one was that Thursday night game that me and Eric raved about. Was going to be such a high-scoring game and be such a good game, and it was literally like watching someone throw up at a bar or something. Like, it was ridiculous. Like, it was,
We were at a bar.
yeah, it was
and
the worst bar
it
ever
was-
too. My food was terrible. It was just a rough night, but
it was rough. It was brutal.
Yeah. But it wasn't as rough for us as it was for
Awful
Drew Brees.
game.
Who,
Awful bar.
Yeah.
Our lives the worst.
Yeah, and Brees is one of those guys who he's the most consistent quarterback right now. Like,
That was
he's
crazy.
owning it, and he's one of those guys who likes to, I guess, make headlines. And he had never thrown 5 interceptions before, and he had a nice streak going of 54 games in a row with at least 1 touchdown, which is the longest in NFL history. And he threw both those out the window that game. He had 5 interceptions, and he didn't throw a touchdown. And basically, he just was awful, and he was by far the biggest disappointment of the week. And that's the thing is,
And it
if you're in a semi-deep league,
started out the week.
yeah,
And he was
Yeah.
we already knew he was the worst.
yeah. And that's the thing is, if you're in a semi-deep league at all, you have to go early to get a guy like Breeze.
Yep.
So he's probably carried you into the playoffs, or not into the playoffs, but going into what would be the playoffs for you.
He
And
still
then
had good games.
yeah, he had great games. He's still like the one of the top quarterbacks. He's in the top 5, depending on your league, I think. But then he just, I don't know what the hell. Like, it's just awful. And he may have pushed you out of the playoffs, depending on your record, because you need your quarterback to play well.
Well, after all the statements that he said about how this is a playoff game, we know we have to play well. The Falcons this, and it's a big game, and then for him to come out and play like that was like, what in the world?
Yeah, and he just tried to take it all on his shoulders, and he tried to win with every pass.
That was bad.
Yeah, it was terrible. And then the second disappointment of the week was Justin Blackmon, who was finally kind of looking like the receiver the Jags were hoping they were getting, and then he comes out and has 1 catch for 9 yards, and he looked basically less than impressive. And that's the thing is, if you took a chance on this guy, like I know my little brother was like, oh, he's finally doing it, and put him in, it's been playing him, and it's been paying off for him. But then this game, he just looked like hell, and it kills you because he was trying to push to go into the playoffs, and this is one of those things that he probably is going to lose based on this. But yeah, so and that's the thing is, Justin Blackmon's a gamble going forward, and he was a gamble in these games. He hasn't had a great season.
Yeah, he hasn't looked very good all year.
But after a couple of good games, he's a decent disappointment.
Yeah.
And then my third disappointment of the week is a guy I talked about on Thursday last week saying he would bounce back, and that was Roddy White, who had another bad game against the Saints. He had he only caught 1 pass for 20 yards. And I still think he's a top 10 receiver, but I kind of am starting to think that there's too many mouths to feed in Atlanta. And because they're just spreading the ball around, and he's just not getting the touchdowns for one. He hasn't had a touchdown since week 6. And it's hard to know when he's going to get targeted. But it's also one of those things that if you're going into the playoffs, he probably got you there, so you kind of have to roll with him.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard to say when he's going to have a good game, when Julio Jones is going to have a good game, when Gonzalez is going to have a good game, and more importantly, as of late, when Matt Ryan is going to have a good game, because he has looked bad the second half of the season after how well he started, and I'm hoping he bounces back, but I don't know that that'll be the case because they're also the top of the NFC right now, and they may start to sit players in a couple weeks, so it's hard to say what's going to happen going forward with this guy.
Yeah, that's the thing is I started to feel really bad that I didn't take Roddy White because I'm like, man, because he had a good year last year, but not what I expected out of him, and so I was kind of down on him, and he kind of looks the exact same, and that's the same thing that happened last time. Julio Jones would get these big games, and Roddy White would just have an okay game. He'd get like a 7 or an 8 point game, and then he'd have a big game the next week, but then you'd go right back and he'd have a 5 or 6. Like it was, and it's kind of the same thing this year. So I don't know what to tell people next year as far as drafting either of those two because they're both so talented. But
yeah, and that's the thing is they still want to run.
Fantasy-wise,
is the main thing there. They
and
still want to
lot.
run. Yeah. And that game, like we said, was terrible. It should have been more high scoring than it was, and it was just awful. All right, and then my fourth disappointment of the week is Vernon Davis, who had another disappointing game. He only had 2 catches for 15 yards. It's one of those things that it kills you because if you were getting ready to drop him, it looked like Colin Kaepernick came in and it looked like Vernon Davis was reborn in that first game when he had 83 yards and a touchdown. And in the last 2 weeks, he's had 15 yards total because last week he didn't even catch a ball. And with a ton of other usable tight ends out there, I think you got to drop him at this point. He's been terrible this season.
He has been.
Like he had a couple of really good games. So if you look overall, it looks like he's had a good year. But those were all in the beginning, and then he had that one game, and then other than that, he's had terrible games.
It's so weird that all those tight ends, 2-3 years ago, that were all, the top 3 off the board. Jermichael Finley, Gates, Vernon Davis are all nowhere to be seen anymore.
Yeah,
they are no longer the elite tight ends in this league.
Yeah, they're awful.
I think Gronk definitely took them over last year.
And Jimmy
Graham. And then there's a bunch of others, Jason Witten and a bunch of others and those, I don't even know where they are, stats wise, but it's so weird because you look at him, and Gates has been available in our league for quite a while, and it's like, I should pick him up.
Yeah, well, it's one of those, I picked him up once, and he got nothing.
I know you did.
And so I'm like, the hell with him.
When you dropped him, and I was like, oh, man, Sean he's probably going to start doing well now. Yeah, and then when you dropped him again, I was like,
well, that's the thing,
sense.
too, is...
And especially people with, Brandon Myers and... Heath Miller,
Kyle Rudolph.
But this was a week for tight ends. After all the bad tight end this week, pretty much if you picked up any tight end, you
Chandler's all of a sudden looking like he's consistent, so look for him to drop off. That dude is every time you talk about him, he's like, I can hear people talking about me. I'm nervous now. But that's the thing is, yeah, there's a lot of tight ends that have been good, and Witten's one of those guys that people were down on him, so I got him late in both leagues because I kind of was off I'm gonna go for Gronk or Jimmy Graham. If I can't get them early, then I'm just gonna wait it out. And that I was able to get him really late, and he's the definition of consistency is Witten. He very rarely has these flashy games, but he always has okay points to really good points, but usually not like he doesn't score 2 touchdowns like Gronk sometimes will or Jimmy Graham will.
Yeah.
All right, and then my 5th disappointment of the week is the Cardinals offense, who they're terrible.
They need to get rid of their rookie quarterback.
And they need to get rid of Skelton. And Cobb actually looks like he could be good, but I think at this point they might want to get rid of him. Like it's going to be
they
interesting.
should go for Vic. Just keep going for Eagles quarterback.
Yeah, right. I actually think it'll be interesting to see what they do because I think they have to do something. I think they have to make a quarterback battle there just because of how bad their offenses look. Like it's to the point now where the Jets won with 7 points and the Cardinals defense was awesome. They had 4 turnovers and they just literally the Cardinals offense had 5 first downs and 137 total yards. Like they just did absolutely nothing. And that's the thing is I just think it's going to be interesting to see what they do going into the offseason. That's really all I had to say about them. They were just the most disappointing thing I've ever watched.
Yeah.
Other than Thursday night's game.
Okay, so we'll run through our next segment, which is pickups, put downs, and watchovers. I'll go ahead and go through them really, really quick because we're getting short on time here. My number 1 is quite obvious. It is Bryce Brown. 72% owned, like Sean said. Absolutely incredible. If you started him, which you were really brave, and really smart, and probably
you
pretty
started him,
good
you were all
looking,
those
I would.
things.
Then that was awesome. If you didn't, I would
Then you're probably dumb. You're probably not
Yeah.
very good looking.
Then I would probably start him. Yeah, the guy just looks amazing. I mean, I did it mainly based off just the fact that I watched the other game and he just looked so good that I felt like I had to throw him in. And I didn't want to play Steven Jackson against the 49ers, which actually was a mistake because he did have a good game.
Yeah.
My number 2 is Russell Wilson at 22% owned. Back-to-back huge games. I told people not to start him because he's going up against the Bears. And almost had my wife switch him out for Flacco, which that would have been so bad. I think Russell Wilson almost got 20 more points than him. I don't know. I think it was. I don't know how much it was. I think it was 27-8 if I remember correctly.
I think so.
Flacco got like 8 points.
Flacco's terrible.
I literally pushed the button and it was too late, and I was like, and then later I was so happy. That it was 11 o'clock.
Flacco's awful. That was at home too. Everyone
that's
talks
why I
about
thought
how
he
he
was
plays
gonna do
better at
well,
home, and
yeah.
he just is terrible.
I thought that's what I was based it off. Number 3 is Josh Gordon, 34%. We've talked about him. He's been kind of off and on, kind of streaky. He's definitely the best Browns receiver. I mean, and he has a lot of nice matchups left in the year, and that's the main reason I decided to throw him back in here. Is they have some really good matchups. So I'm going to go, which I actually didn't put Whedon in here as well, but same thing. Nice matchups. Had a good game. I put him as my in a pinch, and he did really well. So if you need a wide receiver and you're hurting or a quarterback, I would pick up either of them. My number 4 is Brandon Myers at 52% owned. Had a huge game and has a good matchup next week against the Denver Broncos, who give up a lot of points to tight ends. So if you have him or can pick him up, I would go ahead and play him. And my number 5 is T.Y. Hilton at 58% owned, like we talked about. Has had 4 touchdowns in the last 3 games, which that alone gets you a pretty decent wide receiver 3 fantasy day.
Yeah, it does.
And, Luck has just looked incredible. They do have a tough matchup coming up. I was just looking it up. Titans, Texans, Chiefs, Texans. I guess just the 2 Texans games, but I think you can play them. My put downs are number 1, Larry Fitzgerald at 99% owned. Puts up another horrible game. And if you've been playing him, I don't think you're don't think you're looking too hot right now. But if
Yeah.
you do have him, at this
If you
point,
haven't been
drop
playing
him.
and just keeping him on your bench, you're going into the playoffs. Hopefully, pick up someone else and just let him be out there.
Yeah, if you can get Cecil Shorts, definitely play him. If you can get Hilton, I would play Hilton over him. I would play even Josh Gordon, who's kind of just because of the nice matchups. Yeah, it's. I just don't think you can play him anymore. It's just so
Yeah,
awful.
He's been terrible.
My number 2 is Mike Wallace at 98% owned. He's only averaging 5 points a game over the last 4 weeks, and just has not looked good at all with Ben out. I would say bench him at least until Ben comes back.
But Ben might be back this week. It's hard to say. But there's been something off with Mike Wallace this year. Maybe it was the holdout. Who knows? But he had a bad game yesterday, and I don't know. It just
So many of these
looks
are
bad.
based off of just teams and just, I mean, the same with number 3, Ryan Matthews at 96%. Hasn't had double-digit points since week 5, which is huge. I think that's
And
the
I think
only
week
week
5 was his only
double point. Yeah, so
Yeah,
he has
he's
not
been
had. He's
terrible.
only had 1 week where he's had double-digit points. He's 96% owned. I said bench him. I think you could almost drop him at this point. You can't trade anymore, so. But another one was just a bad team, and that's how Larry Fitzgerald is. And Mike Wallace isn't necessarily a bad team, but it'll definitely be nice once Ben Roethlisberger comes back for him. Number 4 is Jeremy Maclin at 88% owned, which just hasn't looked good all year, which is depressing because I was really high on Maclin coming in after the year he had last year. But the Eagles have just looked bad, and because of that, so have most of the players.
Yeah,
Besides
Macklin's
Bryce
looked
Brown
bad.
and McCoy.
And Cooper.
And Cooper,
I would go
yeah.
with Cooper over Macklin the rest of the season. Cooper's working out there. Macklin, I think, is given up like a lot of the Eagle players have.
That's very true. And number 5 is Brandon Lloyd, which I put him in here last week. 87% owned. He's still pretty highly owned, and once again put up awful numbers. This
I
time
think
Brady
he's
didn't do
gotten
well.
barely double-digit points on the season. Like,
Yeah, I don't.
He's been terrible.
I didn't even look up, how many points he's been averaging, but it's low. I would drop him. I think I still own him, but
All right, I guess
Don't
he
play
has
him.
74.1 points for the season, but
if you average that out,
he has been terrible. Like the last 1, 2, you have to
he
go
got
back
2 points this week,
4.
didn't
In the last 4 weeks, he's had like 12 points combined. So yeah, he's not
he?
worthwhile.
It's like Larry Fitzgerald. All of these guys.
But
They're
that's
all
one of
huge
those
names,
things,
too.
though.
They're all
Brandon
big
Lloyd, I think,
names.
will be good next year if the Patriots get rid of him
They
because
should.
they just have too many mouths to feed there, and I think he's good when he's the main target and people have to go to him. But here they're just like, eh. And Brady, isn't a big play guy, and Brandon Lloyd is.
It's true. And my watchovers are all kind of pointless. They were all pretty bad. I did not have fun creating my watchover list last night. My number 1 is Nick Foles at 6%. Had a decent, okay game, and he's the starter. If you're in a 2-quarterback league or your flex can play a quarterback, I would think about it. But I don't know if I'd really dare play him going forward the rest of the year. But maybe pick him up. My number 2 is Rod Streeter at 1%. Had a pretty nice game. It does not seem like Hayward Bay is even a wide receiver for the Raiders anymore. And Moore kind of
Denarius Moore got
He's
benched
kinda-
yesterday for performance reasons. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the hell happened there because that's supposed to be their main guy. But Streeter, yeah, he had that one big catch. And I agree with you. I thought about it, and I was like, should I try to pick? No, I shouldn't. But maybe if he has another good game, he's a guy
I brought
you'll
him
be able to
in.
get. Like Eric said, he's 1% owned.
That's the thing with the watchovers at this point. I mean, it's almost over. Like, these watchovers are kind of pointless, but at the same time, maybe some of them. My number 3, I don't know why I made this list. James Starks at 22% owned.
There's
Don't-
no running backs that are
don't pick him
worthwhile
up.
out there. So,
But keep an eye on him.
yeah.
Don't even.
I like
keep
the
an eye
next guy
him.
on your list.
Number 4 is Jonathan Dwyer, which really could have gone up into my pickups. I already had a lot of really good pickups. That's the only reason he's down here. And we still don't know exactly who's going to be the starter.
He's named the starter, but it looks like Isaac Redmond looked good. Mendenhall, I think he was a healthy scratch. Like I don't think he was even
Yeah.
suited up. But
Jonathan Dwyer's the
know.
only guy out of this bunch that I would go try to pick up right now. 47% owned. You can probably still get him. I would put him as my 6th pickup. And number 5 is Kenny Britt. Just hasn't really looked good, but has potential.
mm-hmm.
I don't know. Watchovers at this point are kind of pointless. I might not even do them the rest of the year because at this point you're not watching over people.
I'm watching over them always. But
There we go. We got 10 minutes.
all right, and then we're gonna go into our true or false section, and like we always do, I'll kind of go over what the results were for last, I guess 2 weeks ago's. No, it was last week's now. Sorry, I was confused off of Thanksgiving, but it was Colin Kaepernick is the best option at quarterback for the 49ers going forward. That was basically all voted true. And I kind of agree with it, even though it's that thing they got back in the game based on him running the ball around. So I think he still is the best quarterback there. The second one was the Steelers will make the playoffs, which was put as false, and the third one was the Bengals will make the playoffs, which is true. And those two are all
It's
even.
close.
So
Yeah, it's really that one's still way up in the air.
yeah, and I think the Bengals is kind of getting a little bit more hype because they're a little bit younger. The Steelers still haven't looked good winning a game. That was a gross game yesterday, but they were able to pull it out. So that'll be interesting. And the Vikings will finish the season below 500. Ended up being true as the final result, and it looks like they're on their way to doing it. Looks like it's back to Adrian Peterson doing awesome while the rest of the team watches. So
Yep.
it's back to same old Vikings, and they have a tough schedule going forward.
Yep.
And then the last one was the Packers will make the playoffs, which was put true, and that kind of transfers over to my first one of this week, which was true or false. The Packers will win the NFC North. I hate to do it because I've been high on the Bears this whole time, but I have to say true. The Bears have a lot tougher schedule going forward. They both don't have a super hard schedule, but the main thing is they play each other once, and the Bears can win any team but the Packers.
That's true.
And yeah, the Bears play the Vikings, then the Packers, then the Cardinals, then the Lions, and the Packers play the Lions, then the Bears, then the Titans, then the Vikings. So similar schedules, but I think the Packers have got it just because they play each other one more time, and I think they might end up even, but I think the Packers will win that other game against them because that's
So
what
they'll
the
have
Packers
to-
do. No matter how good or bad their season is, they win the Bears.
I agree.
All right, cool. And then Lane, do you have anything to say on it?
I want the Bears too, but I think it will be Packers as well.
Okay. And then the second one is true or false. The Texans will finish the season with the best record in the AFC. What do you think about that, Eric?
True.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think it has to be true at this point. Like, they don't have an easy schedule, but they do kind of control their own destiny. I know they play the Patriots on Monday, and I think that's the huge one. They win that one, and I think
It's definitely
it's them for sure.
If they lose it, the Patriots could maybe overtake it.
And the only other ones that kind of sorry, the only other ones that kind of have a chance are the Patriots and the Broncos, and then Baltimore's looked bad, and Baltimore I think has a tough schedule, so I think they'll probably lose at least one more. I think the Patriots will lose to the Texans on Monday, and I think the Broncos play the Texans as well, or they play the 49ers. They had a couple games I was like, I think they'll lose. Yeah, they played Denver week 15. So
the Ravens.
That's the Ravens. Yeah, the Ravens do. That's the thing is all these teams kind of play each other, which is kind of cool. But the Texans, I think the Texans have got it. And then the third one is the Falcons will finish the season with the best record in the NFC. And I'm kind of just saying true on that. I think the Falcons, they have found ways to win every game. Their defense was actually impressive. on Thursday night, which
Mhm.
I didn't think they would be, but they played really well against. When they know they have to play well, they played well. They played well against Peyton Manning. They played well against Drew Brees, and I think they're getting to the point where they're ready to be taken seriously, and so I think they're going to be the number 1 seed. What do you think, Eric?
I agree.
All right, and then the fourth true or false is true or false. Greg McElroy will finish the season as the Jets' starting quarterback.
I think it's Tebow.
You think it's Tebow?
Yep.
Are you being serious or no? I can't really tell. Because that's the thing is, if it was any other team, I think it would be Tebow. But I kind of think Rex Ryan is still so mad about Tebow putting that drive together against them to win that he talked them into getting Tebow just to try to take Tebow out of the spotlight.
Yeah, I think it's McElroy too. I don't think Rex Ryan thinks that Tebow's a legitimate quarterback.
I don't think anyone does at this point. I think they think he's a
And-
legitimate story, and that's about it.
And they can't put Sanchez back in at this point. There's no way.
Yeah,
wouldn't.
I think if they're doing what they want to be best for the team, they have to give McElroy a shot. I mean, he won that game, which I don't know if maybe Sanchez could have pulled something out if he stayed in, but he didn't. And yeah, I think they have to give him the shot and see what he can do. And Lane, you can just chime in if you have anything on any of these.
He's good at mackling those Roys.
That is true. All right, and then the fifth true or false is the Chargers will end the season at the bottom of the AFC West. True or false? I'll let you answer this first.
What is it again?
The Chargers will finish the season at the bottom of the AFC West. And
I don't like the Chargers, so yeah, true.
attaboy.
Yeah. Philip Rivers is finding ways to not just... We talked about this yesterday. Not just... A lot of quarterbacks step up in the final moments, and some of them can't. Some of them just can't quite step up to the moment and lead that winning drive. Rivers is so the opposite side of that, it's not even funny.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. And he's awful. And
Yeah.
he finds ways to lose games. And not even interesting ways. It's just sad.
Yeah, and that's the thing is I think the Raiders play the Chargers and the Chiefs still. And they do have the Broncos next week, which will be tough, and I think they play the Panthers, which I think they can win 2 of those at least, maybe 3.
Yeah, that is.
And then also the Kansas City has looked better, so I think Kansas City could maybe pull out 2 because I think Kansas City plays San Diego one more time and then the Raiders one more time. I'm not 100% sure on the schedules, but I just think San Diego at this point they are looking like they can come in and lose out and be at the bottom of that division. And I guess we'll just see. Like maybe they'll turn something around, but at this point, obviously they know they're out of the playoffs. Like then no one in that division can make the playoffs now unless God steps in. I think like at this point. So like especially the Steelers are 7-5, the Cincinnati Bengals are 7-5, the Colts already at 8-4. Like I think those are the 3 teams. 2 of those 3 teams will make the wild cards at this point. Everyone else is just AFC is just a joke. There's like 7 teams that are good, and the rest are just trying their hardest to play for a good draft pick. Even though I don't know who's the story this year. Like it's obviously not suck for luck. So it'll be
Johnny
interesting
Football.
to see. Oh yeah, Johnny Football,
Except
Eric's favorite guy.
He's not. I don't think he'll. Register for the draft. But
yeah, and that's our true or false. I said true on that. I think I don't know if I said true. I was kind of everything I said would lead to me saying true.
I said true as well.
Yeah, so basically the Chargers awful? Yes.
Yes.
Is Philip Rivers awful?
Yes.
Is North Turner awful?
Yes. How many true or false did you make here?
Oh, I don't know. Those were all just those are all just secondary things.
Okay.
All right, and it looks like
So, there's our podcast.
about all the time we got. And
Sean's not going to be here Thursday.
Yeah, I'm not going to be here Thursday. I'm actually going to be at the Raiders Denver game.
It'll be crazy.
Yeah, it should be great. I might try to
miss
do
you,
some
Sean.
video stuff in, but like I said before, my phone kind of hates to do anything worthwhile when.
It's hard. Yeah, there's
I'm
a lot
on
of
the
people
road.
there. There's a lot of
Yeah.
people. I think they're taking all your data.
Yeah, taking all my data. I should. If I was on Verizon, I'd be a better podcast host, but I'm just not.
That's true. Well, we'll definitely miss you, Sean. I'm sorry about the comment earlier about me being the only host. That is so far from true. I could not do this without you.
This just got really homoerotic. I think we're gonna go. We're gonna go make out. But
I'm just gonna miss you. You're leaving
Oh,
tomorrow
okay.
for a full week. What am I gonna do?
I don't know. You're gonna. I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna be locked out of the studio / Lane's apartment, and people, and I'm just gonna be like, "Hey guys, I'm here to do the podcast," and I'll hear you in here making funny jokes with whoever the hell your special guest host is gonna be, and I'll be like, "I want it. I got my stuff written," and then I'll just hear something turn up, so you guys won't be able to hear me. And I'm like, "Oh, okay.
It's because our headphones will be on. We can't hear anything.
Oh, okay. That'll be why." The door. We never lock the door, but it'll be locked that day for no reason. I get it.
No, you let me back.
Yeah, but you're great.
No, I'm not.
Oh,
You are.
you're so good.
Oh.
Oh my
Okay,
god.
let's end this.
Hey, yeah, we're Fantasy Top 5. I'm Sean.
And I'm Eric.
Uh,
See ya.
Peace out.